here today visiting Palace House at Beaulieu. And Beaulieu is known for the National Motor Museum, but also Palace House was one of the first historic houses to open up to the public. I'll also be visiting Lord Montagu of Beaulieu because that's another branch of the Montagu family. And I want to learn a little bit more about the fabric of the building, the history of his side of Montagu's. Also, there's a big auto jumble sale here today. So I'm excited to see that as well. It's one of the big events that they hold. I can't wait to get stuck in for a great day out. When I married into the British aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But it was also a little daunting. I became a Viscountess, and for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was quite a shock.
I live with my husband Luke, heir to the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset.
Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all.
So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join me as I head off to visit some of Britain's most spectacular historic homes.
Well, what a splendid thing to arrive in. Hello.
I had to arrive in style. I mean, I'm at Beaulieu. Anyway, hello.
Lovely to see you again.
So nice to see you.
This is, of course, the home of the National Motor Museum. We don't actually have one of these in the museum, so if you'd like to leave it with me, I'm sure we could find a space.
Well, I'd have to actually ask our co-production partner, Eoniacom, if I could, but he might say yes. But no, isn't this, I thought if I'm going to come to Beaulieu, home of the National Motor Museum, I must arrive in style.
You certainly have done that. Well, look, let me just show you a little bit about the outside of the house before we go in. Beaulieu is here because Cistercian monks founded an abbey here in 1204, and this piece of the building on the right with the rougher stone was the gatehouse to the abbey where they would receive guests. And it was from that much later, after the abbey was closed and much of it was demolished, that my ancestors built a house by extending this gatehouse, and most particularly my great-grandfather made it into the house you see today.
It's lovely. It is really lovely.
And
but
using the same type of stone that the monks would have used.
Is that, am I correct? Are my eyes still good enough to see that that's some Montagu heraldry up there?
So on the right are the Montagu lozenges that we know so well, with the Monthermer eagle. And then on the left is the Scot moon and stars, which is a reference to our Scottish ancestry.
To the Beaulieu side.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Anyway, come on in.
Fantastic.
So here we are in the front hall of Palace House. Now, although parts of this building date back to the 13th century, this hall and much of this wing are actually from the 19th century because my great-great-grandfather, Walter Francis, 5th Duke of Buccleuch, decided to give the Beaulieu estate, which he owned, it was one of many estates he owned, to this man, my great-grandfather, Henry, who was his second son. And it was only when that happened that Palace House had a resident owner who actually made it his family home, and he undertook lots of changes to make it into a nice place to live, which I'll show you as we go around. So the modern history of Beaulieu really starts with him and his marriage in 1865.
Because he made it a home.
Absolutely.
Right, so he made it home.
So now we're moving on to John, his son, my grandfather, and my grandmother, his wife. His first wife actually died from the Spanish influenza, which swept through Europe after the First World War.
Yes.
And so he remarried in 1920 a lady much younger than him, who was my grandmother.
Okay.
And I remember her well. She died aged 101 in 1996. Whereas he died in 1929, so it's huge.
So, yes. So he remarried younger, but then he didn't. So how long were they married before he passed away?
Only 9 years. And in
Right.
that time, they had 4 children. So it's pretty good.
Right. That is
Including
pretty
my
good.
father.
Including your father.
Yeah.
So when he died, how old was your father? Who was then?
Only 2.5 years old, so my father never remembered him. But my grandmother kept the estate going through the years that followed, until my father got to the age of 25.
Oh my goodness. I love these female empowering women stories.
Ralph's father, Edward, the 3rd Baron Montagu of Beaulieu, was to build on his mother's legacy and transform the fortunes of Beaulieu. And the key to this transformation was his passion for cars.
His interest in cars, would you say, came because from his father,
Very much so,
and
yes.
who he didn't know, and so in a
Yes.
sense that made that connection
Yes,
that
it
he
did.
never really had.
And what I should explain is that John, my grandfather, was a great pioneer motorist in Britain, and as an MP, which he was before he inherited his barony from his father, he campaigned a lot in Parliament and in the House of Lords for motorists' rights.
And Ralph's grandfather is credited for introducing the British royal family to motoring when he took the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII, for a drive in his Daimler. In 1952, Beaulieu was one of the first historic homes to open their doors to the public. Ralph's father, Edward, paid tribute to his father by creating a display of veteran cars, the beginnings of the National Motor Museum.
It all started in this room, because
Right.
when he first opened the house to visitors in 1952, and he was not the first, but one of the first to do this, to open his historic house to the public. Believe it or not, he got 5 old cars into this room, and he did it as a tribute to his father.
Really actually quite genius. You know, when I look at that date, 1952, it reminds me of the story that my father-in-law told me that, you know, in 1953, they tried to open up Hinchingbrook to the public and sell tickets to the house, but that didn't work. Maybe
No.
had they put cars in, it might have still been in
Well,
the
it works for
family.
some stately homes and not others. But obviously that's just one generation back. Let me take you through to the portrait gallery and show you where it all began, because the family ownership of Beaulieu actually goes back to 1538. So come on in
Okay,
here.
fantastic.
Yeah. Beaulieu was a monastic estate until Henry VIII closed all the abbeys.
Yes.
And in 1538, this man, Thomas, 1st Earl of Southampton, negotiated to purchase Beaulieu and another estate called Titchfield from Henry VIII after the abbeys had been closed. And in
Right.
fact, the stone from the abbey was then used for building castles along the coast here, because there is no stone in this area, so it was almost treated like a quarry. And it's rather sad.
Right,
It's a wonderful
yes.
abbey building. Partly for symbolic reasons it was demolished, but also because they actually wanted to reuse the stone elsewhere.
So he then is responsible, though, for building what we see today?
In part.
In part.
I mean, he adapted the Great Gatehouse into a hunting lodge. It was definitely not a main residence.
Right.
The New Forest was a popular destination for hunting, and Beaulieu, you know, was almost like, I suppose, a sort of holiday home, we might regard.
Right.
His grandson, Henry III Earl, and if there's one person in history that I would love to meet, it's this man, because he is the only person to whom Shakespeare dedicated any of his works. Shakespeare dedicated Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucrece to him as his benefactor.
But did he inherit then?
He did.
He did.
Yes.
So he inherited Beaulieu.
Yeah, it was not a main home. His main country residence was Titchfield, which is on the other side of the Southampton Water from here to the east. But it is possible that Shakespeare plays would have been performed either at Titchfield or maybe even here.
Maybe even here.
If only he kept a diary.
Oh, right. Eonia.com has the best selection of online events in art and culture from hundreds of museums, literary festivals, historic houses and gardens in the US and in the UK. The beauty of Eonia.com is that they're all in one place. I've signed up to their newsletter, and so should you. Link down below.
As you can see, this is our main dining hall. So we're now in the oldest part of the house. This was the Great Gatehouse to Beaulieu Abbey. Although this is Victorian restoration, this kind of vaulting is very much in the pattern that the monks would have built in.
Right.
And I'd particularly like to show you this because this is where my height, my sister's heights, and also the generation before my father and my aunts, as they grew up, were penciled on the wall.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so where does yours stop? No, I can see it there, 1985. I think it's about the same.
I don't think I've grown since then.
So, but now that I see this, what was it like growing up in this palace?
Well, there were always have in my lifetime been two definite sides to the house, a public side and a private side. And you kind of know when you come into the public side during opening hours that you can't just do what you want. But there are times when we do use this, as a private room, particularly in the evenings, and Christmas lunch especially. We've had many wonderful Christmas lunches here.
It's wonderful for me to see that you do still use these rooms.
Absolutely.
I think that that's really important. I know that there's obviously, where you were saying that there's the private side and then there's the public side, but when we can, we use these. Yeah. It's the same thing at Mapperton. There's about 6 rooms that are open to the public. And we get asked all the time, but do you still use those rooms? And we do, for Christmas or for Easter.
Yeah, you must.
You must.
And it's quite fun to leave a few remnants. I mean, when, at Christmas we fire those sort of,
Poppers.
little popper things, and some of the contents land in chandelier. Well, you just leave it there because it's a reminder that the place is lived in. So now this is the other room that would have been part of the Great Gatehouse. And what you have to remember, this was a thoroughfare. This bay window would have been open.
Right.
And there would have been a big wide corridor going all the way through and out to the other side. This fireplace, again, is an infill. And I mean, I think...
So I would have gone underneath.
Correct.
Through the archway here, I see.
But anyway, this fireplace, I think, is a splendid piece of Gothic Victorian.
It's lovely. I mean, it is beautiful.
What's nice is that all the changes that were made in the 1870s were very much done with an eye on history. And these, although it is Victorian stained glass, the coat of arms here commemorate benefactors of the Abbey and some of the abbots who presided over the Abbey. So it's referring back to history all the time. Perhaps we should go and look upstairs now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, it got stuck.
It's to keep the intruders out. They built them well. We just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of our American Viscountess patrons. Without the support of our patrons, we wouldn't be able to make these really important historic house episodes. So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as we do, please do check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/American Viscountess. Here you'll get early access to all of the episodes and extra content, like this scene filmed at Beaulieu of the coronation robes worn at Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953.
These you will recognise coronation robes worn by my father and previous generations.
And in the kitchen, we get a glimpse of what it was like to live at Palace House in the Victorian era.
But this is actually in part a restoration. The table is original. The bellboard is original. Oh my goodness, the bellboard's fantastic. Downton Abbey, eat your heart out. I mean, this is it. This is wonderful.
We hope you'll join us as we continue to explore more historic homes across Britain. The Beaulieu Estate, with its monastic roots, maritime history, and National Motor Museum, has so much to offer visitors. But at its heart, Beaulieu has always been a family home. Now I really want to show you a very favourite room of mine, the library.
not so much because of the books, but because this was my father's cosy room. You know, many happy memories of just playing here throughout the year. There is my father, probably painted before he was married. You know, he'd be in his early 20s there.
Beautiful.
And looking restless, which he always was.
Well, that's why he was the pioneer to, you
absolutely.
know,
He had so much energy.
Opening up his historic house. It's incredible. Always thinking of new ways to innovate.
In contrast, my mother here.
It's lovely. She just looks so relaxed and at ease and not a care in the world.
Well, let me tell you, in that chair you had to be relaxed because you couldn't sit up in it. Visitors didn't see this until after my father died, and you know, I still have the option to close it off when I want to use it, but I very much left it as it was, and I really don't want to make major changes here because I just think it's lovely as it is. I must show you this, because had I brought you in here blindfold and spun you around a couple of times, you might have said, well, how do I get out? So these are all false books.
It's wonderful.
You know, none of these are serious titles.
It's absolutely brilliant.
But don't try to pull them out.
No, I was tempted. Then I remembered it was a door.
From its beginnings in 1952, the National Motor Museum quickly grew in size and interest. Within 4 years, it had become a separate museum and today houses 285 vehicles with more than 1.7 million items in the collection. Rafe has promised to show me one of his favorite cars from the museum.
And my chief engineer here, Ian, is just getting the car ready.
Hello there.
Hello, I'm Julie.
Ian, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ian. Oh my gosh, what a beauty.
So this is very special to us because unlike any other car in the museum, this has been at Beaulieu for nearly all its life, since 1913. It's a 1903 car. This model of car was very popular in the 1900s. It's a French Dion Bouton 6 horsepower, 1-cylinder car. And we acquired it from a tenant in 1913.
Right.
It then, in the 1920s and 30s, got used by the estate electrician because we had our own power station in those days, and he had to do the rounds of the estate. So he used this as his works vehicle. And then when my father inherited the estate, this was the only car that came with it. And so this was the first car to become what became the Montagu Motor Museum and later the National Motor Museum.
That's right.
But all the family have done the London to Brighton run in this and completed it, most of us, if not all of us.
All of you have.
Really?
So it's a very special car to us.
So can you explain to me and everybody else who's watching, what is the Brighton to London run?
Basically, it was originally called the Emancipation Run. So in 1896, the first run was initiated, and it's basically tearing up of the red flag, where prior to 1896, you had to have a man with a red flag walking in front of your vehicle. But in 1896, that was repealed, you tore up the red flag, and then you could drive at any speed you wanted down the road.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So the first one was 1896.
It was the emancipation of drivers.
Yeah.
So then came the Brighton to London.
London to Brighton.
London to Brighton
yeah.
to celebrate this? Or?
Yeah, it's an annual thing that's happened ever since, basically, apart from the war years. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And who can sign up for it? You have to have a historic car.
You have to have a car built up in, 1904 and prior, basicly.
So this just gets in.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
So
older cars.
Okay, so how
No newer cars, yeah.
Right, so 1904 or before,
Yeah.
you can do London to Brighton,
You
the
can.
run. And this has been happening every year apart from pandemic years
Sure.
of war. How fast does this car go?
I think flat out we're looking about 30 to 35 mile an hour, but it's quite comfortable at 30.
Okay. So
25 to 30.
I have to say, that's faster than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, it's only a little engine.
Come and have a look under
Yes,
the bonnet.
I'd
Ian's
love
been
to.
getting it ready.
Oh, it's
So-
beautiful.
That there is the 1-cylinder block.
Oh my goodness.
So it's about as simple as you can get for
Yeah,
an engine.
it really is.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. For some reason, I thought it was going to be a little bit more complicated. All right, so what are you doing now?
Well, I'm just about to make it run. So
Okay.
to make it run, I have to turn a few things on, turn the fuel on, turn the battery on, set the ignition controls to, which is very important.
Yes.
You must set the ignition controls on a car like this because you're going to be starting it on the handle.
No.
And if you get it wrong, it's going to hurt, basically. And you quite frequently, these sort of cars will break people's arms if you didn't do it right.
Okay.
So, vital that we do it right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I will have you do that.
So there's a little switch here that we just tighten up, and that connects the battery. So under here, there's a little fuel tap.
And that you've turned that on.
That's on. So on the carburetor there's a little hole. And we just poke this little bit of wire down in there,
Right. So that's just you're just using this to test it.
just to make sure there's enough fuel in there to start the engine.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So next thing we need to do is set the controls. I'll just put my little bit of wire away so I don't lose
Yeah.
it. We have an array of controls here.
Yes,
Most
you do.
important one is the one on the side there. That's the brake.
Brake. Yep.
This top lever, you hear that clicking sound?
Yep.
Well, that's the advance and retard of the ignition. So it's the ignition timing, basically.
Okay.
So this lever is the gear lever.
Ah.
So you've got your low speed and your high speed.
No clutch.
No clutch at
No
all.
clutch.
And the final control is this little switch here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the ignition switch.
There's a lot of gadgets here.
No, it's very
What about
simple
this
once
one?
you get
Does
used
that
to
still
it.
work?
You can
Try
you
it.
can try that, yeah.
So brilliant. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. This is incredible. I'm nervous to drive this though. Oh.
It was going so well.
Oh dear. Maybe the car is nervous of me driving it too. It stopped before we even started.
So Ian's just having a little play with it, but this entire vehicle has just, it's almost shocked me. I thought the engine was going to be just completely enormous for some reason. I don't know why, but there's so many levers and gadgets and things to push and to pull and to turn and don't break your arm and stand back a bit. And I don't know how he remembers all this. So, I mean, they do want me to drive, but I'm gonna be a bit nervous. I mean, what if I like crash into that vintage car and then I ruin 2 cars while I'm here? I'll never be invited back again.
Once Ian makes a few adjustments, it seems I'm headed for the open road. First, though, a much-needed lesson.
See, you just gently push it.
So I don't even touch that?
No.
So I just keep it on the parking brake or not?
Well, you can. No, you may need the throttle. See,
There's no pedals.
I'm just gently pulling this forward. You see, I mean, you've got plenty of revs. You see.
I gotta breathe through this and like get some courage here that I'm not gonna mess this up.
You'll be fine. Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm so nervous.
See.
And also
just-
there's like people out there.
People, cars. Oh my God.
There's people
Right.
out there.
Now the thing is, I can just about slip out this way, but
Okay, do you want me here?
you can move over.
Oh, now it's my turn.
And I have to worry about making sure I don't like hit our
Well,
cameraman.
Well, preferably not.
He says that. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this back
Yeah.
and it will go forward.
Well, if you pull that forward at the same time, otherwise you'll just roll back.
Oh, okay, I see.
Go on a slight hill. That's it. So just slowly pull it towards you.
No.
You know,
That's it.
Okay, watch out, everybody. Okay. Now, should I let it release?
Pull it a bit more.
In towards me?
Yeah, because I don't think it's fully...
Okay. Is it off the brake, do you think?
I think it is. Just pull that in a bit more.
Oh, yeah, in more. Okay. Oh, okay, Rafe?
Okay.
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 Yeah, how do I slow this down?
So, all right, so put it back into neutral, it's about there.
Okay.
Then reach out to the gear stick, so that hand back on there, right hand on the, that's it, and push it towards.
Oh, that's like
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Yeah.
Stopping it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
See?
Okay. Oh, okay.
So,
okay,
that's it.
Now,
Just
okay,
slowly.
now, okay, got it.
Okay.
I can feel it now.
A bit more. You can sort of hear when it's fully in gear. Yeah.
Okay, now I feel it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So
Then I can go here, and crikey!
Now look, you can do a circle here, whatever you like. Figure of 8.
Okay.
Great.
Oh my goodness.
Put it right.
Yeah.
I think we really need a longer straight to get into high gear.
Yeah. I don't want to go into high gear. I'll have you keep it in high gear. Now what do I do, Ray?
Well, you can carry on. We'll do a little bit.
We'll go hit straight?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, she's telling me to stop. Ooh.
No, you didn't do anything
No, I
wrong
didn't do
there.
anything. Okay.
I don't know what happened there.
Luckily, Victoria wanted us to stop, so that's...
That was not planned. That's called conking out. But you just keep it going on gravity and we'll get back to the workshop. So if necessary, I will get out and push.
I'll
But we're still moving.
I'm happy to push with you.
No, it's all right. You won't need a lot of pushing. It's nice to feel the wind going through your hair.
So, how was that for me? I mean, I was nervous. It's nervous because it's so different. It's like you have to work your left brain and your right brain, and your hand brake here, and then get it into neutral here, and then you've got to turn the wheel at the same time, and then you don't want to stall it, which I did. That's why.
No, she didn't. I mean, well, it stalled itself.
It stalled itself.
It wasn't your fault.
Oh my goodness.
Lovely and quiet now, isn't it? Just like an electric car.
It is. It's like an electric car. That's exactly right. That's what our roads are going to sound like soon. Quiet.
Back to the safety of the workshop.
Next time, I continue my visit to the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu. I revisit my youth at the Auto Jumble Sale.
And I have brilliant memories of my dad's MG, this bright yellow, the top down, thinking I was the coolest high school cheerleader ever. So, of course, when I see anything MG, it just brings me back to my childhood.
And hear more from Rafe about the Montagu family's passion for the motor car.
Now, you would have seen this mascot on other Rolls Royces, created by a sculptor called Charles Sykes. At the suggestion of my grandfather, the model for this was a lady called Eleanor Thornton.
Your grandfather's mistress.
Correct.
Oh my gosh, that is really incredible.
It's a very romantic story.
Yeah, it is a very romantic story.